Hi everybody. This video was made as an accompaniment to a kit that I sell, but even so you'll find that you'll have plenty of things to look at and maybe learn from. So we got some blue felt in the background, we have a template, and I'm just using a pencil to go around the rectangle shape, and then I cut out the first line there, and I line it up with the rectangle, and I put in that line there for the hill, just giving myself a basic kind of area to go for. So this little bit here I've just called feature. It might be a little hill in amongst another hill, but it just gives me an idea as I'm setting things out. So I'll just continue on and use those bits of pattern and mark it all out. I might stick with it, I might not, but it certainly helps to have an idea. Right, also with the kit comes this key so that you can then look back and think, what was that for? Oh yes, that's what it was for. So in the kit comes this. It is a needle in a holder, and so it comes safely with the needle inside the handle of the holder. You turn it, take the stopper out, turn it around, put it back in that groove, and then pop it back inside, just like that. And you're ready to go. So you have a foam block. I have a, this is my old one, but I do have a new one in the kit. And this is just to show you how we start. So starting in the sky, take a little bit of the roving that's supplied. We've got white here, and try and just be sparing because you don't know where else you might want to use it, and you really don't need much. We've got blue in the background, so it really doesn't matter. It's a blue sky with clouds, so if the blue pokes through, that's fine. Now a little word about stabbing. There we go, with the needle felt. So with the needle, you're going in and out. As long as you go in and out in the same direction and not in and then turn sideways and then try and pull it out, the needles will snap if you do that. So you can go in and out on the same angle, diagonal or up and down or what have you, as long as it's the same way in and out. And what you're actually doing is pushing bits of fibre through into the background and out the other side. It's knitting that fibre into the acrylic felt. So there we go, that's the start. You can use the tip of the needle to just tease it into the area that you want, and that it'll take as much stabbing as you like, and that really is a very therapeutic exercise, so just keep stabbing. So here we go, we've got some nice blue here, just a tiny snippet is all that's required. Gossamer thin, I'd like to think of it. So yes, we'll pop that over there. That's a bit of blue poking through, but we've just added a little bit of variation there to what was on that felt, allowing bits of it to show, as I said. So we just continue on. Now I'll grab a bit of the bluish colour. It's a darker blue and it has a few other different fibres in amongst it. It's a blend of different fibres. But you see how it really adds a little bit of shadow when we add it on top of the blue. It adds a little bit of variation, a little bit of darker underside to that cloud. So things like that. It's really good. Really, this is all about blending colours together. It's such a therapeutic exercise, and so easy with just the needle. So this is the blue again, the pale blue. This is probably a cotton blend instead of a wool blend, but all good, it'll go in. If you ever do have trouble with a fibre going through, some of them do like melding better than others, then you just put a very, very fine bit of wool over the top, see, like this, and that once it's added on top, will help to adhere it and trap the other fabric, the other fibre underneath. So now we'll grab a little more white. I've teased some of it out and then I've turned it into a bit of a circle, because I thought let's have a little variation in that cloud and you know, add in a bit of character for the clouds. So when you're laying down your roving, you can do that kind of thing. You can, you know, create a point, create a very thin line. Here we go, I'm doing it again. And I've decided I want it to be spread out, but maybe a point at one end. So I give it a little twist on my hand. And then I can pop it down on top. The main thing is to get it tacked down. I mean, you can spend loads of time later if you want getting it nice and flat. But we're just trying at the moment to get it tacked down how we want. This is a lovely dark blue. I use dark blue for shading, and look at this. We're just going to put in a little bit of an outline here because we've come down far enough in the sky, and now we're at the line of where the hills start to come in. So just using that one little tiny bit, and there we go. We've got that looking like a valley in amongst the hills sort of to come. So with the hills, the distant hills, you know, probably a mauvey blue kind of colour, very sparsely with the mauve. I just lose a little bit because, you know, it doesn't matter if that blue shows through again because that is very natural looking. So we're just doing that underneath where we put that dark blue line, you know, roughly adhering to where we put those lines in when we put on the template, traced it out. But, you know, it's up to you how you want to fill it in. It's just ideas about, you know, where you might want to start and stop different features of the landscape. So there we go. First hills are now put in. And see how I'm using that needle? I can sometimes pull it down where I want it to be and then give it a quick stab and it holds it in place. So here we go with the dark blue again. Do like that, like I say. Used more now, and that's adding sort of like a valley, like the shadow of the hills. I think that looks really gives it some depth, gives it some variation, but also sort of looks like where the light doesn't shine as much because the hills are blocking the light. So a little more on the other side. I keep back a little of each of the a little more of the purple on top. A little of each of the roving, because I don't know what I'm going to do. I might want some more of it further on. I might want it to blend something else. So I'm very sparse with it. I just use a little tiny bit here and there. Always leaving more for where I might want to bring it in later. So this is a sagey kind of green, but look at how well it melds in. Almost like it's fog in the lower parts of the hills. Or it could be the beginning of bringing in a green colour. So this is another thing that's in there. It's a lovely specialty yarn in the kit, and it will come into it, but possibly not now. Ah, this is the one. So if you can see, this is a specialty yarn. It's a woolen one, and it goes thick and thin, and really I just tease one edge of it apart, and it looks for me that it's perfect for like bushes, trees on the top of a hillside, of the closer hills. So yes, that goes in. Now I do have bits and pieces in this kit, not just wool. So little bits of fabric, little bits of interesting thread. I really like the idea of mixing it up and having a little bit of all sorts of things. Here I'm grabbing a little bit of that sagey, very light green grey colour and a bit of the purple, and I'm pulling them and teasing them and blending them in a way, because I thought, well, that's another colour I could have. That's sort of, I like the idea that it's a bit of both. So I pop that in as well. I allow the green to show through at the top, because that's those lovely bushes on the top of the hill. And I just start to move that where I want it a little bit, and just start to tack it down by the in and out of the barbed needle. You can see here how well that looks, really. You can use your imagination, see what it's going to be. There's a little piece of greenish silk here, and I have cut it in half in a diagonal way there, and I've added one half this side. I'll use the other side but when I stab it with the needle, it dimples it, creates little puckers, and that looks quite natural then. Now it's not something that would adhere well just with doing this, but this is like tacking it down, and then if we add something on top, that will then help. You know, it's either the stitching, which we will do at the end, or little fine bits of the roving will help. But it's just, isn't it lovely to add that little bit in? I think it works very well. So now what? A little more of this, you know, grey-green kind of colour. Bit of a nothing colour, but it really is a good blender. So there we are. I'm going to add it in there, and I'm also going to cover the edge of that silk, and that'll help to blend it in and also to trap it down. Now I haven't mixed that in yet because I've thought, oh, what else could I have? So I'm mixing a bit of a blue with the purple. See how I'm mixing them together and teasing them and then popping it down. Now what could that be? You know, whatever we want. It could be a lake, it could be shadow, it could be background for something else. It's really making itself this little landscape, and putting it a little tiny bit over top of that green silk really did help to hold it down, but also to blend it in. It's all about blending. So what have we got here? Okay, so we've also got some lovely little wisps of these lovely curly bits, and they are really good. They're crinkly, they add a little bit of extra texture. Nice colour, that green. You can see we've got something really happening here. So that's what I do. I keep going and I keep working from top to bottom until I've got it all used. I use little bits at a time, always leaving a little bit more because I don't know what I'll want for later. I will mention that you should probably leave some of the white for later, because we're going to do the sheep in that at the end. And the reason I've just curled that purple around there is because that follows that template that we did. You know, it was some sort of, I think I called it feature, but I didn't know what it would be. It could be whatever you wanted. So, but it's a separation of colours, just to help it work. So we have purple there, and here we're sort of thinking, what could we do? Now these specialty yarns, I just wanted to put them in because I think they're wonderful. If you cut it into several pieces like that, now they're not going to adhere well, just like the silk didn't, but If you have a little tiny bit there, it'll start to hold down, and then you could add a little tiny gossamer thin piece of roving over the top in some places, and that helps to trap it as well. But look at that, that could easily be some sort of floral bush on the top of that near a hill. A few flowers. It is what you want it to be. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm adding those little bits in here and there, mainly on that feature area. Just getting it tacked down for now. Now a little more. Whoops, now we'll put that one in first. And then what have we got left? That's what you're really looking at, and you're sort of thinking, okay, I've got a little bit of this, you know, grey-green again. I've got a little bit of green, I've got some white, I've got some blue, so there's plenty of choices. Now this is another thing. I have some hand-dyed linen here. It's in a yellowy green colour. I like to tease this apart because it is, it's just got so much texture in it. You know, it'll allow bits to show through. You can put bits on top, but it really adds a lovely background. So I've added that in because I thought that is so useful. And there, I would put it in something like that. Cut it in half, do another bit. That'll do. See how it frays beautifully and pulls apart. And well, you could imagine it's anything. Fields of flowers like rape. Yes, all kinds of things. And so, and this would be totally up to you where you put it. This is showing you how easy it can be. So with this, the yellow, yeah, little bits of roving over the top is really going to help it to stick down there, because it's the roving is the bit that will be forced through to the back side, and at the same time it's trapping that. There we go. So what else do we have in our bag of tricks? Okay, a little bit of that blue, the darker blue that we used in the sky. Yeah, that adds some shadow into that foreground, but it allows that linen to show up. And this is where I'm just using up the bits and adding what I think. So I decided a little bit of smoky purple there. This is another thing I have, is this wonderful specialty yarn with long threads on it, and to me that looked just like grass, so let's have that in the foreground, but over it, to really make it stick, once again, just a very thin veneer over parts of it of the roving. See how it just will trap it down there, and we get to have those lovely grass-like effects of that. Because the closer we get to the bottom, the closer the landscape is, so you'll get more detail. That's where the grass comes in. And we may as well continue across and use a little bit of that greeny colour all the way across there on top of the darker blue that we put on. It's all about building up colours, blending them. There we go. So now I go about looking at what bits are left, and okay, I've got a little bit of this, where would that look nice? And sometimes it helps to have a look at it and go walk away from it and come back, or look from a distance and see what you can do. They're very, very thin, little bit over top of that. Helps blend that in, and also traps it down. Remember that even though we're looking like we are pushing things into the background, we still have embroidery to go. We can still bring it forward again and accentuate bits with our embroidery. Main thing is we're looking at is texture and colour and creating a beautiful background of interest. There we go, a bit more green. And the tiniest little wisp, can you see that tiniest little wisp on top of something, like on top of the purple, would have added that little element of green to it and really helped bring it all together. That's why I say to keep little tiny bits back and decide at the end where you want to use it, because they can be really very effective. I would say at this stage we've used nearly everything up, and we're giving it a good stabbing to make sure everything is really in there nicely. But I said to keep this little bit of white back. Now roll a little ball and then pop it down into your foreground there. Now you can see I've done 4 sheep, and I've made the ones in the that are more distant are smaller, the ones that are towards the front are larger, and I can use the point of the needle there to pull it in and shape it how I want and push it in. And right now I'm just aiming for a little kind of oval shape or sheep shape, and I'll rely on stitch later with the embroidery thread to just bring those few little extra details in that will really tell us, oh, it's a sheep. So these needles, as you can see, as long as you go in and out the same way, like I said, they'll take quite a lot of work before they break. I don't think I've broken one recently, but they will eventually, and we have a spare in there if it's needed, if you do have an accident. But really, in and out the same direction and you're fine. I've got a little more white, so why not? I'm creating a few little curls and whirls to create the clouds in the sky. But overall, I'm really quite happy. I turn it over, take it off the felt, and I can see all of the fibres are pushed through, which means it's melded with the background, and that's the state that I want it to be in. Let's have a closer look, and you can see how it's all come together. Now bits of it may need a little bit more attention, but that's okay. We still have embroidery to go. So I grab a couple of strands from a thread. This is the purple, I think. And I just use simple stitches like a running stitch. And I will do that, the hillside, and I'll pick the lines out of the flowing hills. So I start with a running stitch, and I might do a little bit of that, and then I decide, well, maybe it needs a few French knots or something to add in some distant trees on that hill. So that's our horizon. They would be tiny. They would just be little tiny balls there. Would just suggest bushes or hills or variations there. It adds a bit of an accent. I like to do that, and it just helps us see where the sky and the actual hills start, where they're separated. So I could do a few there in groupings, and then I'll just do a little bit more running stitch to another area where I think could do with a few more. So it's breaking it up, it's adding accent. It's not doing a lot, and it's all very simple. And in fact, I do have these few simple stitches, diagrams of them in the kit, as well as everything else. But if you were doing this on your own, then you can easily, if you don't know these stitches, you can find them on the internet easily enough. They're very, very simple. So I would use running stitch, I would use that lovely French knot, some seed stitch, and maybe some fly stitch. So we'll get to those, but that's about it, and that's quite simple. So it's really just to accentuate, like I say. I'm just continuing doing a few more French knots where I feel it needs it, and then I'll work my way down. And I might think, okay, well, I wish that valley was a little bit more darker, so I'll add a darker color to it using this seed stitch, which is just doing tiny little stitches and doing them in varying directions. It adds shading, or it blends colors. Now I'm just doing a little bit of running stitch to add another little line into the landscape. It helps us sort of suggest hills and other markings sort of in the landscape to separate it. So that's what we're doing. That's looking pretty good. I'll just continue on. Sometimes where I want to make sure something is held down more, I'll do a little bit of stitching. Normally just the running stitch, like I said, or if I'm trying to blend an area into another, a little bit of seed stitch. But I just like to keep it simple. And that's what we're doing here. But as we get closer, then it should be more detail, if you know what I mean. So in this case, when we do a French, oh, there we go, it's a little more seed stitch here, there, and everywhere. As we get closer to the foreground, our French knot is larger, so it can, in this case, it be flowers or something like that instead of distant trees. So here we are, I'm using a little bit of seed stitch to hold that down. When I finished, I go through to the back with one colour and I just do a couple of stitches on top of each other, and that's enough to end off, and then I start again. Now I've loaded some purple onto my needle because I just want to show you this with just a simple stitch there underneath what I'm calling the chin of that little oval. We've pulled it in. Can you see we've now made a head and a body? And what we're going to do now is just a few little stitches for legs, and then we're just going to leave the rest up to the imagination. And sometimes just these little tiny bits help to make the eye see and the brain think that there's more there than what you've put in. So you've got 4 sheep. Make sure you give them a little bit of detail each. As you can see, it doesn't take much. And like I said, a little more running stitch, a little more, a few more French knots in the foreground would look like flowers or bushes or something. Adding a few lines in. It's the furrows in the ground. And there we've got that lovely grass. You could easily add in some longer stitches if you wanted to accentuate that grass, or add some more in. But it's looking pretty good so far. Let's just have a close look at the moment at seed stitch in case you really haven't seen it before. I use it a lot. I use it to blend, I use it to hold things down, I use it to shadow, just so many things which I find it useful for. And as long as it goes in different directions, each little stitch, it really is very effective. And so we're near the end. I have looked at it and thought, okay, what else do I need? I've done a few more little French knots in the foreground. The purple on the green looks so effective. Just adds that little something more, doesn't it? Because I have thread, I may as well use it. I'm adding a little bit more shading here with seed stitch. I'm doing a few more French knots. It might be a grouping of trees in a valley. It's sort of abstract in a way. Not abstract, it's suggestive of what you want it to be. So let it guide you, and sometimes take a step back and think, what else could I do? It'll come to you. That's a closer look now at where I've added some seed stitch and some running stitch and some few French knots. And I really haven't done very much. But I've managed to hold things down and create a landscape. But even then, I'm looking at it now and thinking it could do with a little more punch. So in that, I decide that I need some white. And I'm going to add a few French knots into the sheep to really make them textural and to show up a little better and to sort of, oh, I don't know, they look like the curls then on the wool of sheep, don't they? So that's pretty good. And I'll add that to all of the sheep. And then I also thought it needed another little punch of colour. So I had some plum, I added that to the kit. And now I'm doing some fly stitch. Fly stitch is needle up, go to the right, you can see me in a minute, go to the right and down in between and trap that thread. Hopefully I'll show you a little better here. Yeah. So each time I'm doing it, I am trapping the thread down with my thumb, going to the right and going underneath, pulling the thread up, which then traps that thread into a V, and then the final stage is pushing the needle back down again with that little stem. And that works to create these little Y shapes that can be weeds, they can be grasses, they can be trees, they can be ferns, they can be so many things. I find that a very useful stitch, and if you haven't seen it before, then do check out my video on fly stitch and I'll show you how wonderful it can be. So there you are. Now if you would like the kit, do please follow the links below to my Etsy shop where it's available now. And either way, I do hope you've enjoyed watching and learning how to make fibre art with all of these ingredients. My name's Tracey from Art Fibre Stitch, and I thank you for watching. If you have liked watching this video, do press like and subscribe to my channel to see more. Thank you.